Welcome to our weekday sittings, and I'm happy to be sitting here with you and having a sense of our shared practicing together. And one of the important things to notice in mindfulness meditation, is when our mind has a strong interest or attraction or tendency towards things which are not paying attention to things which are not so helpful for us, things which are undermining us or draining us or troubling us in some way that maybe is not necessary to always focus on. And in meditation, sometimes it's useful to actually find some place in the body and mind that feels wholesome to ground oneself in, to touch into, not as Pollyannish, not as an avoidance directly or escaping from what's challenging in our lives. There are major challenges we have, a lot of suffering that this practice is meant to address. But in its due time, to be able to hold what's challenging with what is supportive, to find a supportive place inside to meditate, to connect to, and then from there to open up and perhaps have a little more calm or equanimity to be with what's difficult. So as we start this sitting today, I'll ask you to go and find some place that maybe feels wholesome inside, maybe feels like a place of support or grounding that might be nice to rest your attention in. That's different than for some of us, the automatic tendency to go off into thoughts, ideas, feelings, which, as we bring attention to them, doesn't really enliven us, doesn't really free us or calm us or help kind of make us feel alive in a satisfying way. So, taking a meditation posture that hopefully you've given some care and attention to, finding a posture that is supportive for you, ideally a posture that doesn't increase any kind of physical pain or challenges that you have. If anything, it helps decrease it. A nice upright posture perhaps. And to close your eyes, or keep your eyes open if that's much better. Half open is the usual way, having the eyes look down. But if all things are equal, it's nice to keep the eyes closed. And begin by tuning in to your breathing, and be aware of 3 breaths, just the way they are, like you're discovering breathing for the first time. Discover 3 breaths, 3 inhales and 3 exhales. And then to take 3 breaths again, but this time in a comfortable way, deeper breaths, fuller breaths. So you get plenty of oxygen coming in, plenty of exhaling, long, gentle exhale. And then letting your breathing return to normal. And then in an easygoing way to scan through your body to see if there's any obvious places that you can release, you can relax. Might start at the top of the head, the area of the forehead and eyes. The cheeks, the jaws. Perhaps as you exhale to relax your shoulders. And if the shoulders don't relax but they feel tense, sometimes it's enough just to create space around the tension. Almost like you're feeling, by feeling the space around them, you give more breathing room for the tension. And then maybe it softens on its own. Relaxing the chest. And softening the belly. And finally, perhaps it's nice to relax your legs, thighs and calves. And then looking around your body and noticing if there's any place in your body that you associate or where you feel something wholesome, wholesome feelings, feelings of some modicum of well-being, some feeling of stability or calm, pleasure or happiness, some place that feels at home, comfortable in your body. And let yourself really register and feel this place. Almost as if you can rest there. And perhaps feeling that place, you can also rest or relax just a little bit, the thinking mind. And this place that you have inside may be of well-being or a place of comfort. Perhaps your breathing can somehow occur in relationship to it, parallel to it, or through it, with it, as if the two accompany each other. And is there any place in the breathing where the body breathes, the sensations of breathing, even if just for a single moment, where breathing itself feels comfortable or wholesome or has a rightness to it? It might not be the place where you usually experience your breathing. It might be some place that's more subtle, still movements of breathing, sensations of breathing, but maybe more subtle than what you usually notice. And then as you exhale, relaxing the mind, relaxing, letting go of the thinking muscle. So as you let go of the grip or the hold on thoughts, the intensity of thoughts, you let go into what feels nice, even if in the body breathing. Not trying too hard, not expecting too much. And as you're meditating, assume that you're meditating perfectly, as opposed to assume that anything you do is not quite right. Just assume that it's all right on track. And in being right on track, being just right, what's happening, it inspires you to be present for what's happening, to be mindful and aware. In a kind way, in a supportive way. whatever challenges you have as you're sitting here. Perhaps you can understand or perceive that those challenges are held, supported by something wholesome within, some stability, calmness, spaciousness, some care and compassion. That the challengers are supported in such a way that maybe it feels helpful to breathe through the challenges, with the challenges. So you're not focusing entirely on the challenge, but you're holding it in a wider context of goodness. And as we come to the end of this sitting, to once again see if you can find within some place of well-being or goodness, some place that feels calm or stable, some place that maybe has some feeling of wholesomeness, goodness, or a sense of comfort and safety within, in your body, in your mind, in your heart. Maybe for 3 breaths, to breathe with and through such a place within, no matter how small it is. And then from this place and within, to bring into mind some of the people you'll be seeing or talking to or emailing or thinking about today. And hold the image of them, the idea of them, close to this place inside that feels wholesome or stable or calm. Maybe a place of stillness. Hold them close to your goodness. And see if you can find some sense of care, goodwill, friendliness, love, that somehow vibrates, somehow is allowed to be in association with the people that you'll be in contact with today. And in what ways might you support them? If you act from, speak from the place within where you're most supported. If you're connected to your place of calm or stability or goodness, might there be there some even unarticulated wish for their welfare, their happiness? May it be that what you touch into as you meditate, may it be for the welfare and happiness of all people that you encounter. May in some small way the lives of others be improved through the small acts of care that we offer. So I feel some happiness to be able to talk or consider this the Buddha's concept or teaching or use of the word Anukampa. The part kampa means to shake, and anu means towards or with, and for in modern English, I like to think of it as resonating with others, to have something inside that can resonate, and this resonance, this word anukampa, I think the best translation that I can come up with right now for it is caring, and it's a basic concept that appears in the Buddha's teachings. And oddly enough, it's emphasized a lot. It's used a lot. It's used much more than the word karuna, compassion. But it is never something that a person cultivates. It's not something one develops. The Buddha put tremendous emphasis on cultivation, development of the heart. And but the anukampa is not. It's almost as if anukampa is an assumed part of the human being, that our capacity to care is kind of innate, or kind of course, we'll care for each other, provided we have somehow settled or let go of all the obstructions from it. When we're caught up in preoccupations, caught up in being in a hurry, caught up in anger or greed or delusion and fantasy, it might be very hard to give space to feel where we resonate, where we have empathy, where we have this, emotions, feelings of being in relationship to other people. And but the Buddha seems to assume that this is the case, and that people will act from there. That parents will have this care for their children. And friends will have this care for anukampa for each other, and that the Buddha himself acts in the world not out of karuna, but out of this anukampa. And some of the things that the Buddha says that he does out of anukampa is that. Or some people ask him, and one of the maybe it's a common colloquial expression in ancient India, when someone is sick or someone wants and requests the Buddha to come to see them, they ask him, please, out of care. It could be out of compassion, but I think that out of care for me, out of consideration for me, please come to visit. The Buddha said to teach out of care, and he also receives, and people want to give him food, for example, he receives it out of care, out of some kind of, in the relationship to them. And one of the things I wanted to emphasize today, that this word care is a relational word. It's a word that exists and or a concept that occurs, an event that occurs in relationship to people, in relationship to others. And that for the Buddha, it seems like he assumes that we live in a relational world, and he emphasizes a tremendous amount, but without using the English word relationship or in relation. I don't know how many, I can't remember any place seeing in any English translation the word relationship or in relation to. So if people looking for that and value that, it's missing. But it's a little arbitrary how we translate some of these words from the ancient language. But we find a lot of words that are closely connected to that. We have the Buddha seemingly regularly was thinking in ways that used a conditionality. That's the English word we use. That things exist in relationship. They exist because of conditions. Things exist in dependence is an English word that's used for Pali. So things exist in independence to each other, in relationship to each other, on a basis of other things. Some things are said to exist like two straws of reed, straws of reed, the plant, and they're leaning against each other and they hold each other up. So they live in a relationship to each other, they exist in a relationship to each other, holding each other up. They exist because they're in relationship. And for the Buddha, everything that exists is said to be conditioned. It means that everything that exists in relationship to other things. And in terms of our behavior of other people, the Buddha, as far as I can read, over and over and over again, took the teachings, religious teaching, spiritual teaching of his time, and repeatedly reframed them in the context of a relationship to other people, in terms of what we might call ethics, in terms of how we would relate to other people out of our goodness, out of non-greed, non-hate, and non-delusion, as opposed to relating to people out of greed, hatred, and delusion. And this tremendous emphasis on greed, hate, and delusion in the Buddha's teachings, and becoming free of it as a definition of liberation, is putting liberation in a relational context. Because greed and hatred, especially hatred, but greed and hatred have a lot to do with the relational way we are in the world and with other people. And so over and over again, the Buddha is coming back to this. And one of my favorite ways, I think I said yesterday, is when the Buddha defined a person of great wisdom. He said a person of great wisdom is concerned with the welfare of oneself, welfare of others, welfare of self and others, and welfare for the whole world. So where does that come from, this concern for the welfare of everything, self, other, the whole world? Where does that come from? If it doesn't come from obligation, doesn't come from a logical kind of idea, this is what we should do, and it comes out of, for example, someone who spends a lot of time meditating, the chances are that it wells up as a responsivity, as a response to this relational world that we live in. We are influenced by others, we feel others, they feel us, and as this capacity to settle deeper and deeper and the obstructions fall away, we touch into this place of resonance, this place of Anukampa, where we, maybe it's close to the idea, maybe the English idea of empathy. And so ethics then doesn't come from following rules. It comes from being in touch with this place where things vibrate or resonate, or where this goodness exists, where we feel in a deep, heartfelt way this being in relationship to the world around us, or how there's a mutual support, or we are. And so for the Buddha, it seems like this kind of place is just assumed to be there. And as people develop spiritually, it's just assumed more and more that, of course, that's what they'll operate from. And it seems like the Buddha's care for the world, the Buddha's way in which engaging and teaching for the world, came out of this place of Anukampa. It's a different place than metta, karuna, mudita, and upekkha, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, for a number of reasons. One is that it's broad, it encompasses all those other four forms of love. It's also maybe more basic and simple. A metta is a friendliness. It's cognate with friend, so it's a kind of way of being friendly and having goodwill, which is a little bit more conceptual, a little more active. Compassion also is really in connection to people suffering, and it's also a little bit more engaged maybe, or specific. Certainly a sympathetic joy is a little bit more conceptual and recognizing something wonderful that's happening there. And upekkha, equanimity, maybe as a brahmavihara, also comes from it's understood to be kind of a wisdom understanding, having a bird's eye view, a perspective on what's happening, that's also a little bit more activated than this deep, settled, quiet place where care exists, a kind of place of care that then can be manifested in loving kindness or friendliness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, but that it's something much more basic and simple and relaxed that doesn't require a lot of thinking, doesn't require a lot of conceptualization. It's just this vibration, this resonance, this place of warmth, of kindness. The Buddha doesn't say that this is innate in us, but he seems to assume that it's there and that that's how people will operate. And I find it very helpful to have this as a reference point, that there is something very peaceful, something at ease, something that doesn't get troubled easily, but that is a kind of a warm caring and a way of living in relationships, that relationships are important. And this Dharma practice we're doing from the very beginning is a practice that is very much connected to our relational world, our relationship to other people and animals and beings and the earth itself. That of course it is. Of course, in all kinds of very fundamental ways, we only exist in dependence on other things. We only exist because certain conditions come together to hold us up. We only exist because in a certain way we're leaning against other things which are leaning against us, keeping us going and alive. And of course, so this deep relational way we are, what happens when the deep relational place of empathy, of connection, of warmth, of goodness, of care comes from a place where there is no greed, no neediness, no attachments, no fear? Can we settle and discover in this deep place of goodness within? And then let that be the support, let that be how we come into the world. And if we do that, I think it becomes second nature. It becomes a natural thing to want to care for others and to care for ourselves. And this idea that Dharma practice cultivates and develops people who care, maybe care in fierce ways, in strong ways, in wise ways. This is a very inspiring idea for me, and I hope that all of us, as we continue to develop this practice, we clearly see the connection between this practice and becoming people who have Anukampa for the whole world. Thank you very much.